Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Like I said in the introduction, I'm here with John Belizaire of Soluna. John, welcome to the show.
Ben, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. I've heard a number of your other episodes, so I hope I can be just as good for our listeners here.
I said it offline too, John. I'm absolutely flattered that you have taken the time to listen to a couple episodes. So I appreciate that a lot. I have no doubt that this episode is going to be just as fantastic. It's probably one of the greatest hits. So I'm excited to jump into things. So John, I think what I like to do with guests, just kind of right out of the gate. I think it helps just frame up the rest of the conversation. Is I'd love to hear what your background is,
hmm
and then how you came from what you were doing prior to Bitcoin mining, because it's a very niche. It's like a niche within a niche, because it's Bitcoin's a niche, and then we're doing Bitcoin mining within the ecosystem. So I'd love to
Right.
hear what your background is and how that led you here.
Absolutely. The way to describe me is I'm a 20-year veteran in entrepreneurship. I've mostly been in the enterprise software space, solving problems for large enterprise. If you look at my career, it's really a confluence between big technology waves and legacy industry. I started in the late 90s, early 2000s. I started my career at Intel in the digital architecture group. We were trying to create technology that was putting PCs at the forefront of the internet and in the move to e-commerce. I left Intel and formed a company with my grad school buddies in Boston that was focused on building component software. I literally would walk around with boxes of Lego blocks to big banks and talk to them about bringing banking online. It sounds funny to
Oh
say these
wow,
types of things,
yeah.
because we sort of do this every day. Like, what are you talking about? Banking wasn't online before? Or, the fact that we can have these conversations over the internet and talk in, thousands of miles of distance between us and not think twice about it. Well, I was part of the teams that were focused on building a lot of that infrastructure and bringing it to
Wow.
telecom and, digitizing audio and all that kind of stuff. And the next 2 decades after the wild success of that first enterprise, we sold it to a big, fast growing company. I think BEA was the fastest company to hit $1 billion at the time, $1 billion run rate, and it was focused on just digitizing and modernizing big iron software and systems. And my most recent entrepreneurial experience was actually in the insurance industry, where I helped to form and build out a company over nearly a decade, modernizing the underwriting operations for large insurance companies, commercial insurance, so
Mm,
not auto and home, but if you have to cover Delta Airlines' entire airline fleet, there's insurance for that. And there are companies that do that using very large teams, geographically
sure.
separated, and believe it or not, fairly manual processes. And so we came in and digitized a lot of that and went further and said underwriting should be a data powered decision making process. And so we helped to bring data and analytics, and now these days that's evolving to AI and all sorts of data support decisions to the platform. So it was more like a Bloomberg for insurance, if you will. Everything you need to see was in one place. And we built that
Wow.
and became the leading company doing that. And right after that journey, I was taking a break, and one of my board members has been a longtime investor with me. He's actually the chairman of Soluna, and he asked me to look at a project that he was working on that was related to energy and blockchain. And I was surprised because he owns businesses that are mostly industrial focused and, infrastructure companies and whatnot. And he had this development platform, and he was asking a software guy to look at energy and blockchain. And I thought to myself, why are you asking me to look at this? 'Cause I don't know anything about energy.
Yeah.
And I think I know a little bit about, I've heard about Bitcoin and blockchain, and I know something about it. I'd actually like to learn about that because that might be the next sort of big tech wave. So I spent some time with his team, and the rest is history. I went deep down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, read the white paper, rewrote my sort of, layman's version of the white paper as our white paper.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then just going way back, my graduate school, my formal education is in computer sciences. I was actually trained in sort of classic computer science, like hard iron. My professors were winners of the Turing Awards, and my master's was in distributed systems. So when I was reading this paper, I was reading all of the compute theory that presumably were, intractable problems that I was taught were unsolvable problems.
Oh, wow.
The Byzantine general problem. These are all things that I was taught. And here I'm reading this paper on a plane on my way to Northern Africa, which is where the development platform that Michael's company was focused on. They had this huge wind farm that had stranded energy, and they didn't have a way to monetize that energy. And we'll come back to that. But I'm reading this paper and I'm just blown away. I'm like, who wrote this paper? Because this is, shattering every myth, and not only did it solve a number of those problems, but it combined solutions to all of those problems to create this incredible new platform. And I thought, like, I've got to go do this again. I got to get involved here. And so here I had to go learn a whole new industry again. And that's been a pattern in my career. And so that's how I got into Bitcoin. That's my DNA, I guess, going after hard problems and bringing them to legacy industries. So here at Soluna, I'm essentially doing the same thing. I'm bringing blockchain and Bitcoin mining, a whole new form of technology to a legacy industry of energy. And so, that's the origin story. I'm really excited about what we're doing at Soluna. And I want to say one more thing, Ben, that, our journey started over there in Morocco. That's where the project was. We were developing this project to sort of, harvest one of the best wind farms. Every time we would describe the potential output of these farms to these large infrastructure investment companies, I mean, you would hear like, wow and whoa on the calls.
Gasps,
70% capacity factor? Are you out of,
whoa.
Like, no one's ever heard of anything
at a wind farm?
Exactly.
See, I'm even shocked. Yeah, I'm even shocked about that.
Texas is 35, 40%. Right. If you're like in deep West Texas, where we're located, but you're talking about, low 70% capacity factor. That's nuts, and, finding ways to monetize that. And so, excuse me. So through that process, we realized that the problem that we were experiencing, which was, stranded energy and a grid that couldn't handle 900 megawatts, almost a gigawatt of energy with that capacity factor, was not a problem that was unique to Morocco. I also learned a lot about the power dynamics on the African continent and how you have lots of these incredible resources that can't get monetized because you have this sort of chicken and egg problem. You can produce lots of energy, but the economy can't consume it. And then we learned that this issue is a bigger issue in the broader renewable energy space. And that led us to refocus our efforts, come back to the U.S., break the companies apart, form this Soluna Computing focused entity, which eventually merged with a public entity and so forth. And here we are today. So it's a long journey. It took about 3 years for us to get to that point. And then the last 2 years have just been focused on us executing on this new approach to bring computing to renewable energy plants that have stranded energy.
Yeah, well, man, John, thank you for that. It's laughable because I laugh at myself because of this, but you read the white paper and you were like mind blown, and it's just this like mind melding moment for you. I read the white paper, I was like, I don't know if that was English or
I have no idea what these guys said.
I was like, I mean, okay, cool. Yeah. And then I read somebody else, kind of like you said, you had to rewrite the white paper. I reread somebody else's synopsis of it and what the technology was actually. I was like, oh, Okay,
Right.
I got it. That's cool.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's laughable for me because I don't have the background that you do. This that's
Yeah. No, it's great. And I continue to be impressed with its resilience and the forethought and just the sheer scalability of the technology. All the different hard problems have been addressed in the design. It's fascinating.
yeah, it really is, and it's been fun to watch it kind of ward off, some of the things that people would think are going to take it down, or anything like that. So it's been really fascinating for me. And then what I'm the most excited about is exactly what Soluna's doing. Is this like enmeshment with physical infrastructure,
Hmm.
real legacy industry, and it's really starting to kind of get woven into like the backbone of what a society sits on top of, which is power.
Right.
So I want to bring you back. You mentioned the first pass for you guys in Soluna was this wind farm with a 70% load factor on it. So
Yeah.
you'll have
70%
to,
capacity.
can you go
Yeah.
a little deeper on that? Like that first project?
Yeah, so it was a wind farm in the southern part of Morocco, and in that area, it was still the infrastructure was still developing. So there was no grid to speak of at the time that we were working on the project. It eventually did make its way down there and pass over it. Morocco, the country of Morocco, was more accurately, the kingdom of Morocco was looking to uh, transform or transition to a state of essentially importing energy, right? So they were energy dependent. They
Hmm.
wanted to become energy independent. And the way to do that would be to use their vast resources, right? Their renewable resources, wind, solar, and hydro. And so that part of the country really became a magnet for uh, developers of renewable energy. And a big mandate was put in place to have more than half of their power come from renewable energy resources. So a big agency was formed. And so there was a lot of momentum around that. And so the original developers, we actually bought it from this German company, were focused on helping the country realize that. And the problem was, much like the problem we see with the projects we see here, uh, wind development and energy development tends to get attracted to places where the resource is very rich, right? It's very sunny or very
Yep.
windy, and all the math works if you can sell the power. And so the problem we were having is we had a farm we could build, but where would the power go? There's no lines to take it to where the power might be used. And even if the lines were there, ultimately, um, it would produce so much energy that the country probably wouldn't be able to consume it all. And so you would have a lot of excess energy. And so
Is
it's kind of,
sorry
yeah.
to jump in there, John. Is that just a byproduct? So that overbuilding component, is that
Hmm.
just a byproduct of economies of scale, or do you know why that project would get built out in that way?
Yeah, because essentially sometimes you have projects that are going to be built because they know infrastructure is coming. Like
Okay.
there's a line upgrade that's happening, and in this case that was true. The country did announce that it was going to be expanding the line down there, and you can build these projects in phases and so forth. But it's not uncommon to see a project that's going to be built where either a line exists or the power need is not yet there, but it's coming there, because it takes time for these things to come out of the ground anyway. When I started working on the projects, people would tell me, I'd say, yeah, I want to get this in a couple of months. And they're like, that's not possible, John. I says, well, why not? Because I'm a software guy.
Well,
And I was
yeah,
used to
yeah,
things like, in quarter, 3 months. And they're like, this is the energy business, John. Things are like 6 months, a year, in those, magnitudes.
yep.
And so it's not unusual that developers take risks in developing projects when the need is not yet there. Uh, but eventually you have to address that challenge. You have to solve that technical issue. Um, when you look at the U.S. market, for example, what you have is overbuilding, and a lot of the overbuilding was just driven by the fact that there were clear incentives to develop this type of energy, right? Starting from the Carter years, there's the famous sort of Carter in his sweater, the energy prices are really high, and he's saying, I don't want the country to be cold, and I'm going to put out these new laws to help to drive more renewable energy. And so that's where these credit programs came into place, and a lot of countries had that. So you just had massive amounts of capital chasing those incentives to build projects, right? And monetize those credits. And so you have what I like to call the McDonald's and Burger King problem. I don't know have you heard this before?
No, I haven't heard that before.
So one of my first jobs was in working for Burger King, and I got the opportunity to go all the way back to the franchise office, and they really taught you the business. And they were trying to have me become a manager and so forth, even though I was like, I'm not going to be running a Burger King store for the rest of my life. I'm an engineer, but I learned a lot about the business. And one of the things they taught me is that these companies, McDonald's and Burger King, are basically real estate companies, right? Their business optimization approach is looking for the best location to put a store, such that they can pick up traffic, get to the demographics that they're looking for, be close to other types of, shopping districts, et cetera, to maximize, the sales of their product. And what you end up, what ends up happening is you have a McDonald's and Burger King basically like a block or two from each other, So the one that I work with, you could walk a few blocks, like maybe like 3 or 4, 4 or 5 blocks, and there'd be a McDonald's there, and then there'd be another Burger King. So
and then don't forget about Subway down the street,
right?
Too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So everybody runs the same models, and you end up in the same location. So if you're looking for the best wind in Morocco, you're going to end up in this, exactly the same place we were. If you're looking for the best wind in the U.S., you're going to be in Oklahoma, in Texas, right, in SPP and in ERCOT, because that's where those resources are. And so you end up having billions of dollars being invested in the same parts of the country, and within those parts, the same local areas, right? And that's why you have overbuilding as well.
Okay, well, I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, it's I love that analogy. The Burger King McDonald's problem. That's great. that's fantastic.
It applies to a lot of other industries too. You get a lot of that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of always circle back to this. I'd love to get your take on this too. So you mentioned they announced that lines are going to be put in, and that there will eventually be some absorption for that energy that's being produced. Well, and maybe you already answered this, because you said even if they did build the lines and all of Morocco took that power, there would still be excess.
So our original model was what we call vertical integration. And this is going to be important, I think, as you look at sort of the role of Bitcoin mining and its relationship to renewable energy, at least our thesis and our belief. And that is that, while the grid wasn't coming, we were like, how do you monetize an asset like that until the economy and the grid can support the power? Well, if you had your own local embedded load, right, then you can wait, right, as long as you can monetize the energy. And then as the grid came online, then you can put power to the grid, and then the load consumer, your proprietary or captive loads consumer, would just eat the excess energy. And if you multiply that model, you can solve a lot of problems on the African continent that is, crippled by energy poverty, right? Because it's hard to get someone to finance building a power plant if you don't have anybody buying the energy, right?
That's right.
If you have an energy consumer already planned and embedded, then you can phase in power into the economy. As the economy grows, it needs more power. You put more power in, right? And then you just keep replicating that model. And that was something we wanted to do, but it proved hard with COVID. We got stranded here, and we began shifting our focus to, what if we just took the the computing to existing power plants, we can solve the energy, and then we'll come back to the vertical integration approach because you want to scale the infrastructure and teach the industry this new approach to developing projects. And so, we basically started focusing on curtailment as our primary problem, and went after assets that had curtailment, either in a pure stranded model like we had, or a partially stranded model like most projects here in the U.S. have.
Sure. Well, and I think what's important to highlight there is what you kind of boil it down. What you're saying is you guys were coming in as Bitcoin mining as a tool, and this is going to be a solution set for this energy asset versus how do we come in and just get the lowest cost of power possible. And so I think it's, kind of a totally different mindset, which is, I think it's what I like about Soluna the most is you guys are really coming in as a tool and, a way to benefit the grid and those energy assets. That's, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Ben, thanks for noting that. And I want the listeners to understand this. And, we see ourselves as a solutions company. We're building a next generation digital infrastructure company, and infrastructure companies are built to solve problems, right? A power plant company is built because places need power.
That's right.
And they build power plants to inject into the grid. What we do is we are a third solution. We're not the only solution. We're the third solution for solving wasted energy, right? If you look at a power plant, I like to use this example. It's midnight in Oklahoma, and the wind is blowing really hard. Mm-hmm. Everybody's asleep. They don't need all of that energy, right? And I tell this at cocktail parties a lot. Well, can't you just store the energy? And that's one solution. Yeah, you can put a battery there at night, store the energy, and then in the morning, inject it. But then if it's also windy in the morning, then you may not be able to inject it, and the battery can't hold on to the energy for that long. So it's a great solution, but not the perfect solution. Or why don't you just move the energy? Put it on a big giant, power line train, and zap it over to the East Coast where people might still be awake, or to the West Coast, and use it to power some disco, making its way. And the truth is that that's great, but those power lines can take years to build. And sometimes they never get built because people don't like power lines going over their farms and ranches and whatnot. And that creates a whole issue in many ways, because if you have a line that's, moving electrons and you're not benefiting from it, why would you participate in supporting to get it built? And so that just takes time. So another good solution, but not a perfect one. And then you have computing. What if you could bring a fantastic pure energy consumption capability that converts that wasted energy into a new resource that has limitless potential? And the perfect solution to that is computing. So we thought about the problem and we said, what if you built a completely purpose-built data center? So not your traditional classic monolithic system that you can put any type of computing in there. We're saying we only want to build a data center that is tuned for consuming this type of energy and does it in a very highly efficient way. So we convert as much of that energy as possible to computing. And we convert it to a specific type of computing, one that's compute intensive, that's batchable. You can put it to sleep and start it up again.
Yep.
And it turns out there are a whole host of different computing applications that fall into that category, that characteristic. Bitcoin mining is one of them. Bitcoin mining is a large global platform for supporting a digital commodity or digital asset. Choose your definition. It's here and it's not going anywhere. And it is enabling financial freedom for hundreds of millions of people who were trapped in monetary systems that didn't work for them. And to protect that asset, you need computing power, because in that white paper, which I read many times and enjoyed, there's lots of fantastic solutions to how you create a monetary system where you don't need a trusted intermediary to manage the whole system and keep ledgers and everything. Well, the system does all of that for you, but you want to make sure that no one can tamper with that, no one can change that, and it will be protected continuously as the value of that asset increases, decreases, doesn't matter. That takes a lot of computing, and it's a very hard problem that those computers solve. And it's not a wasted thing. It's actually a purposeful thing. So I like to say that Bitcoin, in the computing that's happening in Bitcoin, is a feature, not a bug. It is not a
That's right.
This horrible artifact, to the platform. It is a core to its success. So I take that computing and I bring it to that renewable energy space. Well, guess what? I solve the energy problem because there's a direct conversion of that energy. And that power plant now can take energy that would otherwise have been wasted or been turned off, and it turns it into a pure computing resource that's part of a global network. Well, you know what else is part of that category? There's computing that is now, exploding right now, where large enterprises, back to my old life, are now trying to figure out how to use AI. Finally, everybody's getting the aha. Oh, that's how you use that thing? You take all of this powerful computing and you give it all of my data and you just have it learn, using large language models, learn about my business, and then I can just ask it questions. Ben,
Wow.
I've been in the enterprise space for 20 plus years. We have been trying to figure out how to create applications to give businesses insights to make good business decisions, and we've mostly failed. I mean, we've built some great applications, don't get me wrong, but ability to ask open-ended questions like, where should I focus on my supply chain? What's the most inefficient thing? How is customer support going in my company right now? Where should I? And having an AI be able to answer those questions by combining, these models and my own data is game changing. And that is going to drive a tremendous amount of demand for powerful, compute rich applications that need to be built out in a sustainable way. I mean, I've heard mentions that, AI and the next generation of generative AI and machine learning could drive up to 10% of the global energy.
I thought I saw something that was I thought, and I'm drawing a blank on the name, but I thought there was a prediction that it was going to be like 32 gigawatts of capacity built out in a very short time span just for this type of application. Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot, And so people complain now, Bitcoin, you guys use too much energy. Suddenly, we'll be so boring. Nobody's going to talk about us anymore. But that's because you have these big technology waves, you see, and that always happens. It will continue to happen because that is just the nature of computing. And we aim to use that momentum to build a sustainable platform where that computing can live, and at the same time solving a problem. Now, here's the beauty of what happens when you do that. So I've now described, you've got this big problem in renewable energy. The grid is not designed for green energy. There's a mismatch between power and demand. You create a perfect solution that's available today. Computing is available today, so you don't have to wait for power lines to be built to consume that energy. And then you convert it into a resource that's now sustainable to support Bitcoin mining, these next generation AI applications. But because that data center, like we said, is a new form of data center that's not monolithic and fixed in its consumption, it's variable and flexible. The grid now retroactively has a new resource that it can use to manage the growth of this new sustainable energy. And so, demand, we talk a lot about demand response. I've heard some of your previous guests talking about, the role of demand response and how hard it is. Like, convincing people that they should give you access to their devices in their home, and you're going to turn on
Oh, it's like
their
herding
dishwashers.
cats.
And
Yeah.
no, people don't like you to give them.
No.
Don't
Yeah.
like you to take control of their homes. Like you're
That's
going to turn
right.
lights on. When you need to burn some energy. That's not going to work. Demand response needs a scalable, um, really enterprise or utility scale solution for it to really work. And there have been aggregation solutions to help to solve that, and people have to opt in. But really what you need is a grid level resource, large compute, for example, or large batteries that the grid can leverage and plan on using as part of its approach to completing its much needed transformation to green energy.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, don't I've never, well, not never. Now, more recently, I'm starting to really question why, and maybe the whole program to like control people's thermostats and all of that was originally thought up before Bitcoin mining hit the scene. Because I look at like, okay, what would you rather take as a utility company, like controlling individual consumers' thermostats, or you have one site that can manage all of this very quickly? It feels like a no-brainer. So I actually am curious, kind of on that thread, John.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of this, to me, to you, it sounds so perfect. I really think it is. What kind of pushback are you guys getting, if any? What kind of pushback are you guys getting when pursuing a new project? Are you running into any pushback? Or I'd love to hear what you're hearing from like the opposite side of the fence. Like, why don't people want this?
Yeah. So we when we talk to IPPs and they're reluctant to engage, it's usually because another Bitcoin miner spoke to them
Oh,
before we did. And I'm not going to name names, but some guys or gals that reach out to these power, they don't position the thing as a problem solution. They don't take a consultative approach to forming a partnership, and some of these companies have taken a flyer and they've gotten really burned. And so when we show up, we are taking a different approach. I don't know if folks know this, but we will spend several months with a potential partner doing what we call the curtailment assessment. Nobody's ever heard about this, but we actually look at 4+ years of their data that we analyze through a proprietary process we built. And what we show them and demonstrate is how our Soluna, and we show them from an economic perspective, a technical perspective. We show them the designs that we're going to be using, the time frame that the build out will be. We show them how we solve all the classic project finance things that you run into when you start to incorporate this into their environment. What are going to be the regulatory issues that come up? How do you structure this thing the right way? What's the credit profile of the off-taker that's going to be used buying their power, and how you ensure that there's credit support for all of this, and how we stay within the regulatory frameworks or local protocols for power. There's a lot going on there. And we come in with a stack of things and say, this is all the stuff we're going to have to work on. This is how we solve the problems. We've addressed them for you. You don't need to know anything about data centers and law and all that kind of stuff. We come in with the legal team and advisory team, and we take a full solutions-oriented approach to partnering with these folks. And as a result, they get a better experience. Working with Soluna, because we do talk their language. We do talk about structure and regulatory frameworks and finance and analysis and power management. We have a whole software platform that reads signals that determines how big our data center should be at any given time, and how we read the signals for pricing and so forth. And so a lot of the pushback is just from a really bad experience with other actors in the industry, and some of it is just education. So they don't understand
Yeah.
Bitcoin mining. My favorite question is, what exactly is Bitcoin mining? What do
How
the
much time do
computers
you
do?
have, right? Yeah.
And I have this whole magic machine presentation that I do and everything. You're like, oh, magic machine, that's very interesting. And I explain to them what this thing is doing, and they're just like fascinated. Most of the time, their mind is blown. Not because of my presentation, just because they just didn't really fundamentally understand what is Bitcoin mining. What
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
is it? And they realize then that it's not a useless thing. It actually has a role, and it completely changes their posture and demeanor and everything. So that's where we get the pushback. In Texas, there's lots of this, and not everybody's created equal, and so they're learning. These large players, and the upside for us is if we do a good job. With our process, and now we're deploying facilities, and people can see, the experience. The local utilities work with us. What it does is it builds confidence, builds affinity to our brand, and as a result,
Yep.
we're able to do more projects with these partners, and we get more inbound calls. Now we get calls from partners that say, "We've heard about you guys. We want you to. How soon can you get
Yeah.
down here and help us figure out, solutions to our problems?" And that's
Yeah.
exciting for me because that's what I've been doing all my life. Problem solution companies.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I really appreciate that because that's a perfect walkthrough of the differentiator for Soluna and what you guys do. And I kind of stumbled my way, personally, I kind of stumbled my way through a project just 2 years ago up here in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And, I look back on how I was approaching the power company, and I really wish I actually recently reached back out to them to see if they would, hey, would you guys give me a second chance to maybe have a more educated conversation with you guys?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I appreciate the deep dive on your guys' approach. It's fantastic. It's what the space needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
The bad
it is
actors out there will disappear. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I'm hopeful that over time, Bitcoin mining is really seen as an asset, not a risk or a threat to the electrical infrastructure, the grid infrastructure in the U.S. And beyond. It has the potential, and I really do believe this. It has the potential to be just as powerful of a catalyst to innovation and growth of the renewable energy space as the internet did for just about everything we experience today, right? You had these lines that were laid, across the
Yep.
world, protocols that were put in computers that talk to each other that we take for granted right now. Our
Big time.
audio stream is running over the TCP/IP protocol. Nobody talks about the TCP/IP protocol.
Nope. Nope.
They talk about the application they're using. They talk about Zoom, Gmail,
Riverside
Google,
FM. Yeah.
Facebook, Twitter. Okay, I'm sorry, X. Formerly known
Oh,
as
that's
Twitter.
right. Yeah. X. Yeah.
Am I the only one who thinks that that's a really bad idea? Anyway, we're different podcasts, but X and other platforms like that, right, are all
Yep.
powered by the internet. And
Yep.
you could, if we are successful as an industry, of maturing as an industry and engaging with the power companies in a professional way, and being a solution to their problems, Bitcoin mining could be viewed just as impactfully as the internet has been for these different environments, for the helping to transition the grid to a more sustainable and renewable posture. And I think that would be a fantastic side effect of the introduction of Bitcoin.
I couldn't agree more. I actually have a hard time like succinctly saying like all of that. There's so much exciting overlap that it's awesome. And actually, John, this kind of gets into a question and a topic I was excited to ask you about.
Mm-hmm.
I would love your take on like what does the energy future look like with Bitcoin mining attached to it? Could you maybe just kind of expand and keep going on what you think the future looks like from, like the energy infrastructure all the way through to like how Bitcoin plays into that?
Yeah. So the vision I would like folks to imagine, if you close your eyes and just sort of fly in a cool new plane, probably built by Elon Musk or something like that, and just fly over the grid, what you'll see is a myriad of technologies now making up the modern grid. You're going to have, at some point, long duration batteries that are able to store energy. You're going to have, a very small percentage, probably, zero or slightly above zero of legacy fuels powering the grid. It'll be primarily sustainably sourced energy. You'll have a host of different, power lines cutting across the country in a much more robust way. And you'll have these facilities that look somewhat curious, but they're humming along. And those facilities are new integrated assets and tools to the grid that support the demand response balancing of the grid. And those facilities are Bitcoin mining facilities. And I think that will be a look at the grid on a global basis. You'll have these facilities all over the world, and they will become integral parts of the grid. In fact, if you fly that plane over a sort of greenfield area where a new power plant is being built,
Yep.
it will be a power plant and one of these facilities being built at the same time because they're viewed as one integrated unit. And they'll be built in places where normally it would have been really difficult to build energy. And now these facilities will start to come out of the ground, and that will enable those areas to enjoy the benefits of sustainable energy where they couldn't otherwise. And I think that is not too far away if we as an industry are successful and can use Bitcoin mining and other technologies and other computing in these facilities to become this, very powerful sponge for absorbing wasted energy that falls on the ground in the desert out there in parts of the country. And we'll soak it up and turn it into global resources that can advance humanity, provide financial freedom for people around the world, discover new drugs, etc. And it'll all be sustainably powered. That's a very that would be a very gratifying thing to see and be part of as an entrepreneur. And even having had 20 plus years in the space, this is probably one of the most exciting things I've done because it has such broad potential for the world.
I'm very excited about the future that you just painted. That was fantastic. I couldn't agree more. I think we're going to see that type of building and construction happening within the next 1 to 5 years, and we're in the energy industry. That's very quick. So that's exciting.
That's very fast.
Yeah. So just to be respectful of the time, just to keep a tab on that. One of the last questions I wanted to kind of ask you, John, was take me through a look of 2, 5, 10 years from now. What does Soluna look like? What are you guys working on? How's that going to look for you guys?
Oh, it's a fantastic opportunity. So the next 1 to 2 years, we're building out portions of our pipeline. We have about 700 megawatts of projects in various stages. We are now energizing and bringing Dorothy up, the first 50 megawatts of our 100 megawatt facility. We are making motions to go build out the second phase here. And we just announced this year Kadi, which is another 166 megawatt project. So we're implementing our plan, and our plan is a 2-phase approach to our business. Phase 1 is perfect this concept of curtailment solutions, use Bitcoin mining as the first proof of that, a case point of using that form of computing. It's pure, instantly available, can be deployed to solve the problem. And then phase two is to diversify the type of computing that is in the building. And of course, that's going to be high performance computing for AI and machine learning, and building out those capabilities inside those facilities. When I had laid that out for our board, I laid it out as a 3-year plan. So we're like a year and a half into the 3-year plan. So within 3 years, we'll be a diversified infrastructure company whereby we're able to have facilities co-located and integrated with, power plants that have this wasted energy problem. And beyond that, when you start looking at the 3 to 5 to 10-year phase, I believe that Soluna will be a global company solving this problem on a global basis. And ultimately, we will become a company, and we have all the potential to do this, to become a company that is a true infrastructure company that drives additionality. So if you're going to build a power plant and you're concerned about the potential for this curtailment issue being a challenge, you may not build that plant. Or if you're going to build a plant where all of the energy is not yet available or can be used by that particular location, you may not make that investment. But with a Soluna solution integrated into that project now, you will build that. And so we've essentially made it possible to build more energy sites around the world. We're on a mission to make renewable energy a global superpower. And, over the next decade, that's exactly what we're going to do by phasing in our strategy to, continue to sort of, keep honing in on what we do well and building out technologies and perfecting our infrastructure solutions to solve these very large problems that are deterrents to us really taking control of the climate issue.
It's again a very, very exciting future. I'm beyond pumped to continue to watch the progress that you guys are making. I appreciate you laying out the 5-year roadmap for us. That's great to hear. What I like to do at the very end, John, is I want to give you some room to give our audience a handoff. How can they find you, Soluna? How can they get in touch with you guys and also watch, that progress that you guys are making?
Ben, thanks for having me on the show. I've really enjoyed it. For our listeners, you can find us at solunacomputing.com. There you can engage with lots of content we built to tell our story. If you're an IPP, you can learn about our curtailment assessment there as well. And we hang out on all things social. We're on LinkedIn. We're Soluna Holdings there. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, as at Soluna Holdings. And we also are on YouTube. There's a Soluna Holdings website there as well, and YouTube channel. And we encourage you guys to follow us and send us questions you have and watch as more of our sites come online.
Absolutely. We'll link to all that in the show notes as well, John. I can't thank you enough for your time, John. You're a busy guy. I appreciate you carving out some time to have this discussion. This was great, and I know that the audience is going to really value everything that you brought to the table. So thank you very much, John, and you take care.
Thanks, Ben. Great show.